If you enjoyed the stories you heard, please give it a like and leave a comment. To hear the newest Cryptid Tales, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you've had an encounter of your own you would like to share, or if you'd like to give feedback or make a suggestion, email me at cryptidtalesmail@gmail.com. I was on a night hunt with my AR equipped with night vision in East Georgia in the swamps. I walked around 400 yards from my truck to the stand at the back of the property at the edge of the swamp. I climbed into the stand and settled down for a long evening. It was around 6 p.m. when I heard something walking on the other side of the swamp. I figured it was hogs and just waited until dark. I was alone once again, and with my encounter still etched in my mind, I was wondering if I would have some type of Bigfoot encounter when it got dark. Let me tell you something. If you ever have an encounter in your life, then you will always remember, and that will stay with you forever. As the sun faded behind the trees, I then turned on my scope, just scanning the surrounding area. I saw nothing. Then, in 30 minutes, I repeated the same thing. 2 hogs emerged from the thicket, a boar and a sow. I wanted to take the boar, but didn't have a shot. He chased the sow back into the thicket. 20 minutes later, they came back out. I decided to take the sow as I looked through my scope. I then climbed down from my stand and took that 400-yard walk to get the truck and returned so I could load up my harvest. I started down the dirt road and came up on a spot that tracks in the road filled with water, but it didn't look too bad, so I put my truck in 4-wheel drive and eased through, not realizing it was actually around 3 feet deep. I was stuck. I called for help, and a company came in with a wrecker truck, but couldn't get through the water that's at the beginning of the property. So they left. They called someone else that had a 4x4 truck similar to mine. Mind you, I got stuck around 8:30 p.m., and the other guy finally showed up around 10. In between that, I tried everything to free myself. Around 9:30, I heard something or someone whistle very close to me 3 times. Again, the hair on my neck stood up, and I said to myself, this can't be happening again. I grabbed my AR with the night vision scope and scanned the area where I heard the sound. No eyes or nothing. I felt the same feeling I had some years ago that I was being watched. I was thinking maybe they got to my harvest and took it. I heard frogs croaking and crickets, but who would be whistling in the dark? I'm getting too old for this. I might retire from hunting. This story happened to my father in Levy County, Florida around 1978 at a standard-bred horse farm. My dad was a horse trainer in north central Florida at the time. He told me this story, and it started my interest in Bigfoot. So Dad said at about 9 in the morning, he was training a horse that had recently been broke and hooked up to a sulky cart. He said that as he rounded the track, the horse started turning towards a huge pine forest behind the farm, parallel to the back stretch of the track. He said that was nothing alarming, as young horses always thought they would see things and kind of spook easily. He rounded the same turn again, and he said the horse was sideways on the track, trying to look at the same spot. Now my dad thought something was up with the horse seeing or sensing something. The next time around that same turn, my dad said something started to scream like a woman but way louder than a human, and it went on quite long on one breath, and then trailed off into a deep kind of rumble. The horse, upon hearing this, jerked his head straight and began running as fast as it could and would not respond to my dad's commands. It ran full speed off the track and up the lane about a quarter mile to the barn and ran straight inside. My dad said he got off the cart and the horse just stood there shaking uncontrollably. He looked around and said all the horses in the barn were shaking as well, trying to look where the sound came from. In the barn was a farmhand, and he asked my dad what that was and how was it so loud. The man told my dad that he thought they both just heard Bigfoot. Dad said the guy was referring to an ongoing newspaper story that had been running in the paper about a guy tracking a Bigfoot from the Everglades to Canada, passing by that part of north central Florida. One last note about this story is that my dad said every animal on the farm that day, dogs, cats, horses, etc., acted very quietly and subdued. The animals stayed very low-key and did not frolic or play around the farm that whole rest of the day, which he found really weird. I hope you liked this story. I sure did. I would like to hear a Sasquatch belt out a yell, but I don't want to come face to face with one. For all you hunters that have ever heard a deer grunt in the woods and how it moves through your body, I could only imagine a Bigfoot yell. This recent encounter took place when my oldest sister and I were traveling to Huntsville, Alabama from Birmingham. It was in January of 2019. We had just turned onto the exit for I-565 traveling east off of I-65 north, and I decided to call my soon-to-be daughter-in-law to find out what would be the quickest exit to their house to avoid the traffic. I placed this call at 3:02 p.m. as I was talking to my soon-to-be daughter-in-law as we had traveled there for their wedding that was to be on Saturday, February 2nd. My sister turned to me very matter-of-factly and said, "I just saw a Sasquatch." I was still on the phone with my soon-to-be daughter-in-law, and I responded to my sister, "What? Did you see something on a billboard?" She responded, "No, I just saw a Sasquatch." Even though I have had a lifelong fascination with the subject, due to my father's up-close encounter as a child, my older sister and I have never discussed the subject of Bigfoot or Sasquatch, which is in itself very strange, because she and I are extremely close. But honestly, this is one subject we've never discussed. So I really had to gather my wits to realize she was actually serious, because I was driving in afternoon traffic. I then asked her to describe for me what she had seen. She said she saw this hair-covered creature that she thought at first was an orangutan, but she realized this couldn't be possible. She said the car was moving, and she had to try to determine what she had just seen, when all she could think of was Sasquatch. Strangely, she didn't say Bigfoot, she said a Sasquatch. She said it was covered with red hair. Note, actual Bigfoot sightings never say fur-covered, they all say hair-covered. And it had a wide face, and it was crouched down near a ditch, and the red hair was hanging around its face. She said she couldn't make out any distinct facial features. She said the creature appeared to be trying to duck and hide. She also remembered there was a cypress swamp and water behind the creature. I was glad that she was able to gather so much detail from her sighting. It is also important to mention that we were riding in an SUV, so my sister had a raised viewpoint, and where she saw this creature was inside the Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge. I nervously drove to my son's home, and we greeted everyone, but I was just flabbergasted. I could not believe my sister had just had a daytime sighting of this creature. There is a rather famous daytime sighting that occurred not far from her sighting, outside of a Marriott hotel, where a hotel guest spotted a Bigfoot in the tree line. You and your listeners can listen to the details of this daytime encounter on Sasquatch Central channel, entitled The Monsters of Madison County. I know my sister saw this creature, and it appears they are moving closer to where people are and are losing their fear of humans because this sighting occurred at 3 p.m. near a heavily trafficked highway. I hope by sharing this encounter, others might have seen it and will also be willing to come forward.